The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character.
During a family meal, my sister sat back and grinned. She finally let out the comment she had been holding onto all evening. "Home ownership isn't in your future," she told me. My father nodded, looking pleased with her words. "Just keep renting for the rest of your life," he added. Everyone at the table watched me. They were waiting for me to look ashamed, for my voice to shake, or for my eyes to tear up. I didn't give them any of that. I just took a slow breath, put my fork on the table and said, "You are likely right." While the rest of the family relaxed, thinking the conversation was over, I felt something sharp take hold inside me. The very next morning, before the rest of the house was awake, I made a single phone call. That call would completely change the story they thought they were in charge of. My name is Riley. For my entire life, my relatives have judged success by square footage, interest rates on loans, and how loud a person could talk about their home renovations during dinner. I grew up learning to stay out of the way in conversations that never felt like they were meant for me. My sister was always the favorite. She got straight A's, had a perfect resume, and seemed to have her entire life figured out. When she bought her own house at the age of 27, my parents treated the news like a major family prize. They brought it up at every single holiday. I never told them they were wrong about me. There was no point. They had already decided who I was. To them, I was the daughter who preferred renting because I wasn't tough enough for the stress of owning a home. They saw me as the quiet child who was probably having a hard time, but was too nice to admit it. They never really asked about my career, except for an occasional half-hearted question about how my consulting was going. But I wasn't a consultant. I was working in property acquisitions, checking out tenants, fixing up buildings, and managing cash flows. These were things they never thought I was smart enough to do. I didn't keep it a secret because I was scared. I hid it because their praise was only for the loudest people, and I didn't want to put on a show for them. 2.5 years ago, on a cold night in late autumn, my phone rang. It was my sister. Her voice was trembling before I could even say hello. She had lost her job, and her monthly house payment of $3,200 was about to ruin her. "Please," she whispered to me, "don't let our parents find out. They can't know I failed. I will give the money back as soon as I get a job." I could hear the fear in her voice. In that moment, she wasn't the golden child anymore. She was just my sister, terrified of falling off the pedestal everyone had put her on. So I decided to help her. I paid for 1 month, then 3, then 6. By the end of the first year, the money was coming out of my business account automatically. No one noticed it but me. She eventually found work again, but the pay was much lower than before. Even so, she refused to change her expensive lifestyle. She kept the big house and the fancy upgrades to maintain her image, even though she didn't have the funds. She was too proud to let go. In the meantime, I kept growing my own business. I bought a 2-unit building by the river, a 3-unit place downtown, and several houses in stable neighborhoods. I ended up with 15 properties in total. Each one paid for itself and brought in extra money. I lived a very simple life, wore basic clothes, and didn't say much. It wasn't because I didn't have goals. It was because I knew that making a lot of noise doesn't build anything that lasts. But last night at the dinner table, when my sister laughed and announced what she thought were my limits to the whole family, something inside me changed. It wasn't just the insult itself. It was how sure she was. She was certain that I would always stay small just so she could feel big. She had no clue how wrong she was about my life. The morning after that dinner was very quiet. It was the kind of heavy quiet that happens after a storm. I made some coffee, opened the blinds of my small 1-bedroom apartment, and watched the cold light hit the floor. For a moment, I just stood there and breathed, letting the memories of the night before replay in my head. I thought about my sister's laugh and my father's nod. I remembered how everyone looked at my face to see if I would break. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from my sister. She sent a photo of her kitchen with a new backsplash she had just installed. Then she sent another text that made my stomach turn. She wrote that she was thinking about upgrading her master bathroom next because she wanted to keep building equity. That word, equity, hit me harder than any insult. She was talking about building value in a house using money that wasn't hers. It was money I had been quietly sending her every single month for 2.5 years. She was using my hard work to polish a life that was built on a lie. I looked at the photo of her expensive tile and felt a cold realization. I had helped her survive, but I had also let her put on a performance. I allowed her to shine while I stood in the background holding everything up. I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. I opened my laptop and pulled up the dashboard for my rental business. I looked through the numbers for my 15 properties. The buildings were full, the income was growing, and all those late nights of planning had paid off. I had quiet success and quiet power. I had spent years living way below my means while my sister lived far above hers, and yet everyone thought she was the responsible one. The hypocrisy was painful, but I realized my own silence had allowed it to happen. My phone buzzed again. My sister sent another message saying the bathroom renovation would be expensive but worth it for the added value. I didn't text her back. Instead, I called Ellen. She picked up right away and sounded friendly. I sat at my kitchen table and told her I needed to make a change. I told her to stop sending the mortgage payments for my sister starting next month. My voice was steady. Ellen paused for a second and asked if I was sure. I told her I was completely sure. After the call ended, I kept my hands on the table and let the silence settle. The decision felt heavy and final, but it was necessary. I had spent 2.5 years keeping secrets and letting my entire family believe a version of me that wasn't true. It was time for them to see reality. My sister didn't notice the missing money right away because she was used to everything being handled for her. She expected money to just appear whenever she needed it. But 3 days later, around noon, my phone lit up with her name. I knew exactly why she was calling. When I answered, her voice was shaking a little bit. She said something weird happened with her mortgage payment and asked if there was a glitch at my bank. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence last for a few seconds. I told her there was no glitch. She took a sharp breath and asked if the money was just delayed or if she should expect it the next day. I told her it wasn't coming at all. The silence on her end was full of panic. She whispered, asking me what I meant. I told her that I had supported her for 2.5 years, which was 30 months of payments, and that it was ending right now. She lost her cool immediately. She told me I couldn't do this and that she couldn't afford the full mortgage on her own. She said she just needed a little more time. I reminded her that she had said the same thing a year ago. She got angry and said this time was different because she was expecting a promotion and the bathroom renovation would help the house value. She told me I needed to be patient. That word made me feel bitter. I told her I was done keeping her afloat while she pretended she was doing it all by herself. She let out a furious exhale and asked if I was punishing her because of what she said at dinner. She called me dramatic and said she didn't mean anything by her comments. I told her she meant every word she said. She went quiet again because she couldn't hide from the truth anymore. Then she asked why I was doing this to her right now. I told her that after the dinner, I finally saw the situation clearly. My silence had become her permission to treat me poorly. My help had turned into her feeling entitled to my money. I told her it was simply time for it to stop. Her breathing got uneven, and she said she couldn't lose the house. She said she would fall apart if our parents found out she couldn't pay her bills. I told her that the house was her responsibility, not mine. She started begging me then, making messy promises to stop spending money and to find a better job to pay me back. They were the same promises I had heard for over 2 years. I told her I wasn't her solution anymore and that she needed to learn how to live within her means. Neither of us spoke for a long time, and then she hung up without another word. 2 hours later, she sent me a text saying she was calling a family meeting for that night. I didn't feel scared. I just felt like the truth was finally coming out. The living room felt smaller than it usually did when I walked in that evening. It was as if the walls were waiting for something to happen. My mother was sitting on the couch, nervously rubbing her hands together. My father stood over by the window with a stiff back and his jaw held tight. My Uncle Steve was hanging around the doorway like he was waiting for a show to start. Then there was my sister. She stood right in the middle of the room. Her eyes were red from crying, and her makeup was messy. She was trying to act like she was in control, but she was clearly falling apart. She didn't wait for me to even sit down. "Tell them," she said, her voice sounding thin and sharp. My mother looked confused and asked what she was talking about. My father's expression changed, not quite to disbelief, but he was getting there. I didn't say anything at all. My sister kept going, her voice cracking as she spoke. She told them she couldn't afford her house payments. There was a long silence after that. My Uncle Steve cleared his throat and repeated, 2.5 years. My sister looked at me for a second and then looked away. She admitted that I had been the one helping her. My father straightened up and asked how I had been helping. My sister took another shaky breath and told him that I had been paying her mortgage. My mother gasped and put her hand over her heart. My father just stared at my sister like she had told him something impossible. $3,200 a month, he muttered to himself. Every single month. My sister whispered a yes. Then every eye in the room turned toward me. The air was thick with shock, confusion, and embarrassment. My father finally spoke up and said, "But you rent. You barely." "I barely what?" I asked. My voice was calm and steady. I asked if he thought I barely managed my life or if I barely understood how money worked. His face turned a bright red. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin folder that Ellen had put together for me. I set it down on the coffee table and pushed it toward him. I told him he should probably look at the papers before he finished what he was going to say. He hesitated, but then he picked it up. As he read, his face went through a lot of changes. He looked confused, then he couldn't believe it, and then he just went still. He looked at my mother and then back at the papers. 15 properties, he whispered. My mother leaned over to see the papers, too. She started reading about the rental income and the market values, but her voice just trailed off. My Uncle Steve's eyes got wide. He pointed out that the papers showed my portfolio was worth about $3.8 million. My father slowly lowered the folder and asked if it was real. I told him it was accurate and that I had been running my own real estate business for a long time. The room went silent again, but this time it felt much heavier. My sister couldn't even look at us. She was shaking as she wiped her eyes. My mother whispered, asking why I never said anything. I told her it was because she never asked. My father started to say something, but then he stopped. He looked smaller and less sure of himself than I had ever seen him. He started to explain what they had thought about me, but I told him I already knew. I told them I chose not to correct them. My sister finally looked up and said she didn't want anyone to know she was having a hard time. She couldn't stand the idea of being seen as less than perfect. Her voice broke as she admitted she let me help her and told herself it was just for a little while. But then everything got more expensive, and she just kept pretending. I finished her sentence for her, saying she just acted like everything was fine. She nodded while tears ran down her face and said she was sorry. She said she didn't want to lose the life she had worked for. I told her she didn't work for it alone, and that was exactly the issue. My father stepped toward me, looking guilty. He told me they had been unfair to me. I told him that he was right. My mother had tears in her eyes and asked why I would hide something so great. I told her I didn't need people to clap for me to know what I was worth. I told her I needed boundaries and should have set them a long time ago. My sister looked at me with desperation and asked what was going to happen next. She begged me to keep helping her until she got her promotion, promising to figure things out after that. I told her no. Her face completely crumpled. She kept pleading, but I told her I loved her and that I wasn't going to pay for a lifestyle she couldn't afford anymore. I gave her 30 days to decide what to do with her house. I told her she could sell it, change the loan, or find a smaller place. But it was her problem to solve, not mine. She shook her head and cried, saying everyone would think she failed. My father spoke up before I could. He told her she didn't fail because she needed help, but because she lied about it and acted like she was better than the person who was helping her. My sister looked like those words physically hurt. My mother moved closer to her and told her she didn't have to impress the family, she just had to be honest. My sister whispered that she hadn't been honest for over 2 years. I told her that now she finally had the chance to be. The mood in the room started to soften. The truth had changed everything. For the first time in years, no one was faking anything. My father looked at me and apologized sincerely. I told him I knew and that we could work on things slowly. We all sat there for a long time. The air felt different, lighter in some spots and heavier in others, but it was finally real. And for that moment, that was enough. The next 30 days went by much faster than any of us expected. My sister tried every possible way to keep her home. She made budget sheets, took on extra work, and spent late nights applying for new jobs. But the numbers never matched the expensive life she had built on my money. When the house finally went up for sale, she cried quietly while she packed her boxes. These weren't tears about losing a building. They were the tears of someone finally facing the truth without anything to hide behind. I helped her move out, but I didn't give her any money. Instead, I used my own hands to carry her lamps, tape her boxes, and load up her car. While we stood in her empty living room, she apologized to me again. Her voice was softer this time, and it sounded real. She told me she used to think that selling the house meant she was a failure. She realized now that the real failure was pretending she didn't need any help. I told her it wasn't a failure at all, but a way to get her life in order. I told her that her lifestyle finally matched her actual income, and that is what real stability looks like. Her new condo was a lot smaller and much simpler, but it felt peaceful in a way the old house never did. There were no more huge payments she couldn't afford, no more secret panic, and no more acting for other people. My parents changed their behavior as well. My father started asking for my professional opinion about his retirement cabin and how to handle the loan. My mother began texting me news articles about what was happening in the real estate market. They were proud of me now, but it was a quiet kind of pride. There was no big spotlight, just genuine curiosity about my work. Our Sunday dinners started to feel different. There were fewer people comparing themselves to others and more real conversation. For the first time, nobody was bragging or trying to judge anyone else. We just talked like a normal family. My sister began to fix her finances one honest step at a time. Our relationship changed too. Since we stopped having secrets and false expectations, we finally felt like sisters instead of it feeling like a chore I had to pay for. As for me, I felt a lot lighter. I felt like I had taken back the space in the family that I didn't even realize I had given up. Looking back, I know the real win wasn't just telling the truth. It was learning that setting boundaries isn't like building a wall to keep people out. It's about protecting yourself. My family looks at me differently now, and it's not because I proved how much money I had. It's because I finally stopped making myself look small. My sister is building her life the right way this time, and we are much closer because of it. Peace feels a lot better when you don't have to buy it with your silence. If you have ever been treated like you aren't good enough by the people who should know you best, just know you aren't the only one.